The world of augmented reality glasses is just a little bit closer as Meta shows off its Orion AR prototype. But the more I read and see about it, the more I start to wonder whether we really need this type of technology. We're going to look at the past, present, and future of augmented reality coming up on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. Joining me on the show today is Ramon Lamas. Richard, hold on. I'm going to do that again. Lamas, right?
Lamas.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Ramon Lamas. He is the Research Director of Mobile Devices and AR/VR at IDC. Welcome back to the show, Ramon. We've had you on. This is your third appearance, I think?
Third or fourth?
Yeah. We love having you here and talking all about AR/VR, even though most people are probably just be like, I don't really care about any of this stuff at all. So,
and you know, let them care that. Let them care that seriously, because the way I think the AR/VR market has been, building over the past, let's just say 10 years or so, it's the people who get it and want it and the people who don't care for it at all.
Yeah.
And, let's just say that's kind of like an 80-20 split, with 80% probably going into that second group. But the 20% of the people who are really following closely, kind of like you and me, it's a lot of fun to see it develop from where it began.
Yeah.
And I think, we're starting to see hints of where it could head next.
I was on that 20% side, and I'm starting to slowly move to that 80% side, I think. So anyway, let's jump into why we're having you here on the show today. Sure. So the biggest hype was Meta's latest Connect conference. They had a lot of announcements. They added another VR device. They've consolidated the market on their VR side of things. They had some AI announcements. We're not going to talk about that because I think those were goofy. But the latest AR was this Orion AR prototype. And so again, because it's a prototype / developer kit, it's not going to be available for the public. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about it. Like, we could still talk about it and say, our thoughts of it. So from your perspective, when you're covering the market, how do you approach this versus maybe an actual product that could be sold? Do you still write about it? And then, what was making people excited from what you were reading and seeing?
I think when I look at it, there were several things that really kind of jump out. Okay.
Yeah.
And the first thing that always jumps out, it's going to be the hardware. Okay. These are big, thick, clunky glasses.
Right.
And I'm going to date myself. Do you remember?
Even clunkier than these.
Clunkier than those.
Yeah,
and, I mean,
these are pretty clunky.
I'm going to date myself here and say, do you remember Velma from Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. These things are big and thick and really, that's just going to grab everybody else's attention.
Yeah.
Would you be seen in public with that? Because let's face it, glasses, kind of like jewelry and your clothes and everything else, it's an expression of how you want to look and present yourself. Do you want to present yourself with these kinds of things?
Yeah.
For that 80%, probably not. But for that 20%, I mean, if you watched if you watched the video last week, there's some people in that audience wearing the Snap Spectacles 5. And let's face it, those are kind of big and clunky unto themselves. But in both cases, if you're talking about Specs 5 or if you're talking about Orion, these things get certain jobs done that people want to see done.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that's going to keep on get me coming back as part of the 20% to say, okay, what is going to be the latest neat, interesting thing that hopefully you're going to save me time. You just save me effort. You just save me brain power.
Yeah.
And some of the demos, I think they showed that, but I still think they're not exactly ready for prime time, so to speak.
All right, let's stick on the fashion stuff for a second, because we'll get into the tech stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These, 11 years ago we had Google Glass, and those were a lot more fashionable. It felt like, except for maybe that little thing that was on top, right? Like the little one that was projecting this. The little
screen. Metal, yeah. There was the metal band, and then there was the camera.
But at least
on the side.
They still seemed like they were glasses-esque. Whereas this is it feels like you're going from a ski goggle thing with the Vision Pro. And again, I don't know if we can really compare these two, but you still have thick glasses, but thick glasses were kind of cool for a while, weren't they? Like, that was the whole geek chic type of thing. And I think most people would be into geek chic, but not if they've got to wear this heavy thing on their face.
I think this, the geek chicness about this one, they kind of, Orion dials it up to 11,
yeah,
maybe even 12 or 13, at this point. But I think when you try it on, my friends who were able to try it on say it's reasonably okay. It's probably not going to be something you do for all day wear. And what I'm wearing right now is probably what you're wearing right now. You got to wear this the majority of the day.
Right.
I don't think I could wear Orion as it is all day. That's going to be a tough part. And then on top of that, you got to have this battery puck on your person, or at least within, I think I read 12 feet.
Okay.
In order to keep it going at all times. And then let's not forget the wristband that's included too.
Right.
So all of a sudden you have it's not just glasses. You're getting pretty close to being Iron Man. and do you want that? Do you want a full suit of armor just to be like, hey, I want to see something?
There's a segment of the audience that wants to be Iron Man.
Maybe the 20%.
Why not? Like put something on your arms and legs and then have thrusters on them. I mean, that's not that far fetched for all the people that love those movies. The hardware does sound interesting too, because from what I understand, people really liked that wristband gesture thing, so that it was monitoring. It was some sort of tech. I can't even pronounce the name of it, but like something telepathy was, so it could tell if you're doing this versus this, and
slide around,
and make the adjustment. Now, some people were saying that that's what Apple was doing with its, but it wasn't wearing it on a device. It was just the camera was picking that up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they were thrilled with the wrist part, and then less happy with the puck. Because again, it's another device that you can't just leave. If you're going to be in the room, you can go around it. But again, we didn't talk about any mobile applications for this thing either. All of the applications I saw, you were in a room,
mostly
which is
stationary.
what the problem with Vision Pro was. So now do you have to carry this around? And then I was reading a lot of the comments, and we're like, well, why couldn't they just put that in a phone? And most of the responses were, well, because Meta doesn't control the phone market. So you would have to partner up with an Android, or you're still doing Google, Samsung type of relationship for that, and you're definitely not going to go partner with Apple. So this isn't going to be something that you can put your iPhone with. So it feels like extra hardware when we don't want extra hardware, right? Or do we want this?
I think by and large, people don't want anything more than they should, reasonably expect. I mean, they expect the glasses, sure, and I think that's the ground level of expectations. But having to wear a wristband, I don't think we're asking too much. Okay, considering what you can do with it, and quite frankly, it's going to be light. And what I think and what I would hope for the future of this wristband is that here. You take that band and you can put it on a smartwatch or a conventional watch and do whatever you want.
Right.
But it's something that you're already wearing anyways.
Right.
And all of a sudden you kind of forget about it. Okay. And so it's just something that you're going to have on your person anyways. Now, as for the puck, okay, look, this is not intended to be a mobile experience. Okay. And you said it yourself, and the demonstrations prove that. I mean, you look at a table of ingredients, come up with a recipe. You want to play, virtual ping pong, and boy, that was like the slowest moving ping pong game.
It was cringy to watch.
I couldn't get excited about it as much as I thought, but if I'm waiting, 5 seconds for that ball to get to the other side. But hey, you know what?
I know it's again, it's small steps. It's a prototype. It's hard to criticize something like that. If this was an actual product and that they were expecting people to pay, let's say they were saying pay $3,000 for this, and they were going to take a loss on that, but you wouldn't want that as your demo.
No.
You'd want something that's more action oriented, laser tag type of a thing, or treasure hunt, even like type of a game.
Even Holo Chess a la Star Wars, I would have been psyched.
Ooh, that would be cool. Yeah. That's my geek coming out.
Exactly. But that's what Snapchat demonstrated. They showed virtual chess between two people. But to your point earlier about with all this hardware, I think a lot of it is going to kind of just melt into the background, because chances are you will already have one of these things on your person anyways.
Yeah. Well, so that was, there was a comment that Zuckerberg had made about that, they want AR glasses, or they want augmented reality to replace the smartphone. And that just seems like a huge pie in the sky, like, claim, because as we've all known from the history of technology, you never really replace anything. Most of the devices, we're still using computers. We're still using personal, the phone was supposed to replace the, You know, remember all those people? I don't know. Did you go to a lot of the conferences when the tablets were coming out?
Oh boy!
And all of these, there would be these tech journalists or other media types. They're like, "Well, I'm going to ditch my laptop," and then they're going to sit there and they have a little stand and they have a little, typing thing. And I was like, I'd rather just have a big bulky backpack and have 20 things in it because I could be more effective depending on what I want to do than just trying to force myself into, email and all this other stuff on this little thing.
It turned into a PC Plus kind of play, right?
Yeah.
Because it was, you couldn't, and we all pretty much still have, laptops at this point, but we're not going to be getting rid of this at any time soon. I mean, we're not going to get rid of our smartphones at all.
Yeah.
And then, if you see me wearing a pair of glasses, at least the ones that look like Orion or, anything similar to that, I think there's also the social aspect of being like, people just don't want that.
Right.
And it's not just, you as the wearer, it's everybody else as, are you shooting video of me? I really don't want that to happen. Stop it now.
Yeah.
And I don't think, we're at that point.
Yeah. Well, there was also some stories about this whole Ray-Ban thing that they've got, these Ray-Ban glasses. And the key feature on that is just you have a camera in the glasses. And you've got mobility now. So you can go and walk around and record. And it was just one function or one feature. But that's what attracted people to it. Like, oh, I could do this now, or I can go up and interview people now without having to pull out my phone and film them like this way. So I'm a little confused about like why not try that with these AR types of things. It feels like they want to be 17 things to one, or they want to have 17 features instead of just maybe the one that would get people to buy it.
Yeah, and having 17 features, you're just really asking to become the Swiss Army knife of devices, right?
Right. Well, if you're going to replace the smartphone, you have to, right?
You have to, but but I don't think we're at that point yet.
Yeah.
We still got to have the point that you get to the point where you got to do one thing really, really well. Okay. And what's the one thing that we're still dealing with? Apart from battery life, apart from cost and everything else like that, it's still that angle of view.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where I really tip my hat to the folks at Meta who said, we can do 70 degrees now. Okay, now you got my attention. That's pretty neat. Because I think Snap Spectacles 5, they topped out about 46.
Okay.
And nobody is really at that 70. But again, it's not still, commercially available, to everybody yet, because last thing you want to do is put on a pair of glasses and have your vision be that wide.
Right. So you're talking more about like with regular view, I can go, that's almost 80, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can barely, peripherally, it's almost 90.
Almost, yeah.
So 70 is probably like here, right?
Maybe a little bit out. I mean, if you're the bridge of your nose, the angle, that's still pretty wide. Yeah, that's still pretty wide. But if you want to be doing some of the things that they're claiming to do, you're going to have multi screens of this, that, and the other. Well, having as many screens, quite available to you readily. Yeah. Instead of being like, okay, here's where I'm typing a document. Turn your entire body this way and say, okay, this is where my spreadsheet is, and then turn your body the other way. That's, that's why I have two big monitors in my office, so I don't have to do that.
Right. So that leads me to the question of this whole, where's the killer app? And it's obvious that when you make it a prototype developer kit type of thing, that the company is saying, yeah, we've got some ideas, but we're not completely sold on all of these ideas, and that's why you open it up to developers. Maybe you guys can think of something that will get people to want this. And even Apple has that problem with the Vision Pro, right? Like they haven't really kind of given you a killer app other than watching movies, maybe in a different space or. Mm-hmm. Or I still think that they've got potential for the content creation side of things, where you can have people using your phone. You can start creating spatial videos that you could then watch later. Mm-hmm. There is something there, and I think if they get their price point down, you're going to see that take off. I think more than anything else. But again. I've covered VR for a while too, when you see it in the business space, and all of the business applications seem to make sense. Put it on a field service tech. Mm-hmm. And then you have an overlay. I've seen, HoloLens type applications. I went to a show where they were using a pair of goggles and it showed me how to put pieces of a cube together. And then after I ran through the instructions, I was able to do it. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense for a single application. If you're looking at a plane engine and you need to fix it, or if you're looking at a car and you need to fix it, I want that type of additional information, or a connection where someone could talk me through it. But I could kind of do that with a phone too.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think,
it just makes it hands free, right?
right. And then, I think, the field service piece, I think, it's definitely one of the most, popular use cases. Let's not forget training either. Okay. The fact that you can have training and have zero repercussions if you make a mistake.
Right.
And, I was talking to a company not too long ago, which instructs medical professionals saying, hey, this is how you go about, doing XYZ procedure. Now, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to
Right,
say,
right.
this is how you do a brain transplant or something like
Yeah.
that. But, if you're a nurse and you have to, operate a crash cart in the event of, a cardiac arrest.
Right.
And you're not going to try that live on anybody. I mean, that's just dangerous.
Right,
I mean, not to mention, irresponsible. But if you can have your glasses that say, hey, now you take the paddles, now you charge them, and now you ask these questions and check your patient, and to do that all in virtual reality and get that practice and develop that muscle memory,
Right.
and to the point that you're comfortable with, because having that hands-on experience is much more memorable than just reading about it and
Right,
seeing videos.
Right. Has that market stalled at all though with the VR or AR in a business landscape or vertical industry type thing? Or is it just that it just doesn't get the hype that these other companies get?
I don't think it gets the hype because, we've been doing surveys, for the past, several years now. Training always rises to the top. We ask, well, what's the most popular use case you have?
Yeah.
Here's a dozen. Okay. And we talk about, field service. We talk about expertise capture and all these other things. It's the training piece.
Yeah.
It's, how do I, and it could be training for technical, capabilities, or you want to develop your managerial capabilities. And from my time, if you can try some of those managerial ones, really, no joke, no. And
Are they good or are they just cheesy?
No. I mean, they're kind of cheesy. I mean, if you stepped out of it, okay, the cheesiness factor kind of goes through the roof.
Yeah.
But I sat in this one, and they put the glasses on me, and they said, "Okay, Ramon, your job is to fire the person in the video."
Okay.
And it was set up so that, it was, scripted, and then the person sitting in front of me and they're stating their complaints and all this other stuff. To the left, you had, the entire menu of what do you want to say next? Do you want to say this, X, Y, or Z? But you have to get to that point where, you have to terminate somebody's employment. In reality, my heart's racing.
Yeah.
My hands are getting sweaty.
Yeah.
I'm getting really nervous about, having to do this. But we know that it happens, in real life. And, as a manager or anybody else who's a manager, you may have to be, kind of faced with this. So,
Again,
practice make perfect, but practice makes better.
I'm really surprised we haven't seen more of that. Only it's got to be just the cost of doing it. Because again, we just went. So I'm gonna spill a couple of secrets here. We recently had to do some training here at the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did we get? We got a link and we had to watch videos and we had to take quizzes and all this stuff. But it just felt like this was something that 30 years ago people were doing, and again, you get these really badly acted scenarios for don't make fun of your coworkers if they've got a hangover was one of the videos that came to mind. And then I was in, even before I came back here, there were some training videos that I had to watch, and you just sit there and watch them and you're like, oh, this is like in the 80s when I had to watch those Burger King training videos on a VHS tape. It's like we haven't advanced beyond just watching a video, taking a quiz.
We haven't, but and I would question, that 80s, 90s, early approach, how much of that information did you actually retain?
Right.
Probably not a lot, a fraction of it.
Right. And it was just the stepping stone into getting into, okay, now you're going to be making a hamburger. And so you learn basically by following someone along and then doing it yourself. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But now, there's no repercussions if you screw up.
Right.
In VR or AR. And
right. Did you fire the employee correctly?
No. No, and at least not the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, because part of me, we got end up being argumentative, which gets nobody nowhere.
Right.
And so it's if you think about it some more, this is not just about your task is to terminate someone's employment.
Yeah.
It's a task. It's training empathy.
Right.
Of saying, okay, understand what the other person's going through. See their perspective, present your own, and work towards a solution. Right. But larger still, for VR and AR is that if you can train X number of employees, the right way to do something and
Right.
to do it safely, you could pay dividends or avoid, accidents or negative consequences later on. I mean,
Right.
Another one of my favorites was forklift training in VR. Okay. You know how much one of those machines costs?
Oh yeah.
It's like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And I think I'm being, kind of conservative at that
Right.
point. But when I tried it out over at CES, they had this mock-up of a crane or a forklift rather, and you wear glasses and it kind of takes you through like, here, go through this kind of like obstacle course, go to that shelf, get something off the third shelf
Right.
and bring it back. Of course, I dropped it.
Right.
Now, who knows what could have been in there? It could have
Yeah.
been, soft, plush stuffed animals, or it could have been really expensive equipment.
Or toxic chemicals.
Toxic chemicals, take your pick.
Yeah.
But it kind of develops the muscle memory
Yeah.
of doing it correctly. And if I drop a virtual box, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
So you think that the market is ready for that type of training materials, or is there still some hardware limitations and costs involved in getting this to a more business focused audience? Or
I think it's kind of moving in fits and starts.
Yeah.
Because the training is going to depend on what are we training people on, and there really is no kind of silver bullet across multiple industries.
Yeah.
But you have companies like say Walmart, who says, okay, we're going to get thousands of headsets to help teach empathy and also get ready for Black Friday and difficult customers and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But they also use it to say, hey, you know what? This is how we're going to train you to how to use or set up different displays, etc.,
Right.
or at least understand the specs behind some of the things that we're trying to sell.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to depend on kind of different industries, and because you need to have the hardware there, and for the most part it's there. But how are you going to get that software off the ground?
well, big question then does because this is all virtual reality training programs that we're seeing, right?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see that moving from a VR into an AR scenario if the
totally.
hardware becomes better?
Oh yeah, I mean that's where field service is
Yeah.
really kind of warming up to the entire. Okay, if we can have these glasses on us as we're in the field, and if you're, let's say you're Canon and you have to send somebody out to go repair a photocopier machine.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can just walk somebody through and say, okay, I see what you see.
Yep.
Pull this switch, turn that lever, go to access that panel. How many lights are on? That's what you fix.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So it's very popular over there too.
Okay. So I want to shift gears just a little bit back to the consumer side of things.
Mm-hmm.
If again, let's say you've got a pair of glasses, but you really need apps and you really need to do a scenario.
Yeah.
That might get people excited. Having ingredients on the table and making a smoothie was not it. And opening a refrigerator, because I think I saw another video of someone opening a refrigerator and saying, "What can I make?" That seems like a made up scenario that enhances the whatever app you're doing, but there's no one on the planet that's going to do that. I don't go home and going, "Oh, I only have milk, butter, and something. What can I make with it?" It's like, no, I mean, I'm out of food. I need to go to the store, right? Or I need to order a pizza that night for the kids.
Right. And I think, we're still trying to figure out exactly what it is that the consumer wants. And
Yeah.
what we know at this point is the same thing we've known for the past number of years, is that they want the following. They want games. They want gaming. I mean, with
Right.
some of the Quest 3 and 3S, it was all about, here, try this latest Batman title or try some of these other ones. And we're going to package these, along when we sell them. And the other piece is, multimedia. Okay, do you want to watch
Watch
a
a
game
movie.
from the 50-yard line?
Right.
Here, we got it for you.
Right. Or watch a basketball game and have 17 different angles.
Exactly. But, to come out and say, hey, we're going to help, solve these problems of, what to make for dinner or something like that. I think that's still kind of, further.
That's one of the AI,
afield,
and that's
but-
one of the AI things about it. It's like you could point your camera at it, and ChatGPT or whatever AI program you're using will do the same thing. Or you could say, I have the following ingredients, give me a recipe, type of a thing. It's like, okay. But no one's talking about the mobility part of it either. It feels like when I'm talking, the scene I have in my head whenever I think of augmented reality is I'm just a guy walking down the street and I need to find the location. I need to find the building that I'm at, and I want a big giant green arrow on the ground that gives me step-by-step directions on where to get to the thing or where the door is, or and then you see someone where like, well, I walk by the restaurant. and I look at the restaurant and says, okay, well, here's what they open, here's what their menu is. That seems interesting. But then there's the joy of walking down that same street and then having ads pop up all over the place. That's the downside of a lot of this. But it is still that mobility. Or if you're driving a car and you've got these things on, do I want a heads up display? Yes and no. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Like I have CarPlay, but even just looking at CarPlay does take your eyes off that for a second. So,
right.
you know, is the mobility, is that where the killer app will come in, or is it just, is it, and again, if you knew, you'd probably be developing this. I think we're all just kind of throwing pasta against the wall at this point.
I think mobility is the expectation.
Yeah.
That it's going to happen and it's going to have to be there. Okay. Nobody really wants to be confined in a 15 by 12 room and then, that's it. Because, as interesting as that is, I think what kind of, brings life to all of this is that you're going to be doing this with other people as well. And that you're probably going to be doing, and especially in the case of AR, you're probably going to be able to see other things. I mean, imagine if we had 5 of us in, a 15 by 12 room, all of us with glasses on. Number one, that's crowded. And number two, what the heck are we be able to do?
Yeah.
But, if we could walk, if we could just plonker ourselves down and let's say in the middle of Times Square and, one of the most, sensory, saturated and bombarded with so many things. And if you could just have glasses to help make sense of like, I really just want to figure out how do I get to, Junior's cheesecake. Right. Oh, right. That's kind of how it comes together.
And it feels like that would help with tourism for a lot of these different applications. Now, you have to figure out who's going to pay for it. I mean, obviously, Juniors is probably going to have to pay in order to be in the thing. All right. There was still no mention of people with prescription glasses. So you and I, we're both wearing glasses. We have probably different prescriptions. It's kind of been addressed in the VR space, but they didn't do anything about it here, especially since these things were made out of silicon carbide. So can you get prescription silicon carbide? I don't know.
As far as I know, probably not.
Yeah. That seems like they're just kicking that can down the road. And again, have they really solved it with VR? The other problem I always have with VR was I would get nauseous on some of these things. And so I don't know if they've solved that yet. I just gave up for a while. As I'm getting older, I don't really want to deal with that anymore. But does Meta get a free pass because it's a prototype? On a lot of these criticisms, or not? I mean, do you get a free pass? Is the question.
I think they get a free pass, but it comes with an asterisk. It comes with an asterisk, and here's why. The free pass comes with the fact that they're kind of previewing, saying, hey, this is what we have been working on.
Because they have been criticized for spending a lot of money on, the stock price for a while was down because they were spending all this money without anything produced. But so now they're like, well, we produced this.
Yeah, and now that you have it out, I think there's something that gives something for a lot of people to shoot for. Okay, and let's take a look at those people. Number one is developers. Number two is component suppliers. Who's going to be able to supply something even as powerful or more powerful or less heat conducive and that much smaller. Okay, because we don't want to look like Velma.
Yeah.
So I think to the extent that there's that they said, yeah, we have been working on it and here's the proof. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now here's where the asterisk comes in. It's that you have your hardware. Congratulations. Okay. Where's the rest of the apps? Okay, because you can have the greatest software in the world, but let's face it, apps and content are king.
Yep.
Okay, and we need to see a lot of things from that meta universe, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But from that ecosystem kind of transplanting itself over here, and we can finally have some of those experiences because let's face it, Meta and Facebook and all the other kind of apps, it's never about somebody by themselves. It's never about isolation.
Yeah,
they're always about bringing people together. Okay, how is it going to really come together over here? Is it going to be ping pong at 2 miles per hour?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Okay. But can we have certain situations where I'm on the West Coast, you're over here on the East Coast, and you're saying I need to talk to Ramon really quickly, and we both have our glasses on. Okay. You know what? What is it that you want to talk about? And guess what? there is, Meta Horizons and so many other kinds of, and you laugh about that, but I think, if we forget about the fact that forget just for a second what it is and how it does it.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have a platform in place already that they could leverage and say, okay, this is how we're going to bring people together. Boom.
Could this have been done if it wasn't for the way that Meta is set up company wise? And again, Zuckerberg has this ability. He can't really get fired. The way that he's set up the board, he's got all of these super voting majorities. So if other companies look at how Meta's set up, and if you were a different company and you came out with something like this, they'd be like, wait, we spent how many billions on this? But he can get away with it because of the way that he set up this company. So could this have been done with any other company? Or is this just a unique, he can spend $10 billion on something and not face any consequences?
The list of companies that could blow through billions of dollars and not blink.
Yeah.
About,
is really small.
That's really short. Yeah. That's a really short list.
And I think we're seeing this in the AI space too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, when you look at Zuckerberg and say, yeah, he can get away with it. Because, in the time that it takes for us to do this entire interview, they just generated millions more dollars through ad revenue.
Right.
Okay. And if you look at the rest of that competitive landscape, nobody can, very few others can lay claim to that capability.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for better, for worse. Okay. And take it as you would. Meta, the number one, AR, VR company by volume. Right now. Right now in terms of, and that's just market share. And then when we talk about mind share, okay, it's probably even bigger. Okay, you go to stand on the corner in New York City and say, name 10 AR VR companies.
Okay.
Well, there's Meta, and then there's Oculus, and like, well, okay, those are the same thing.
Company. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's Apple, and then it kind of dies off after that.
Yeah.
And then there's Sony, there's an HTC in there, but even after that, it gets really, really short.
Right.
So, all things considered, Meta is, very well positioned to do what it wants to do right now. And very few others could probably get away with that.
Okay. I think you and I talked before the show, and part of my irritation with a lot of these products is the fact that it's run by Mark Zuckerberg and it's Meta. And, I have I don't want to say personal issues with him because I've never met the man, but I'm not a fan of his. And he's got, and it's okay. It's okay for me to not like him. It's okay for him not to like me, if he ever does meet me. But I'm starting to think, is that clouding my judgment on the technology side of things? And I started thinking, if this was another company that came out with this, would I have treated it the same way? Would I be more skeptical, less skeptical? So I want to bring in some of the other companies, and you can tell me,
sure.
what you're hearing on this. Like obviously the first one I want to talk about is Apple. There was a story that after so last week or a couple weeks ago they Meta announced this, and then there was another story that said Apple might be taking another look about where they want to go with Vision Pro and the whole AR VR space. Like seeing what they've done. Obviously, any company that is competing with another company, they look at what they're doing and like, are we doing this? Are we going to do it better? Are we going to change direction? So what are some of your thoughts about Apple? Because again, then the Vision Pro came out. The next thing was you got to make it lighter and you got to make it cheaper. So do they do that with the Vision Pro, which is still, they don't even want to call it an AR VR device. They're still on that whole spatial computing thing. Yeah. So what are you hearing or seeing or reading about Apple what's the Apple play on this?
I think the Apple play, I think it's really interesting because, you talk about giving companies a pass. Apple's getting a pass right now.
Apple gets always, they always get a lot of passes
here's why. Look, we're looking at Meta / Oculus through the lens of being around for nearly a decade now. Okay. And we followed its growth and stuff like that. Apple just came out this year. And it's probably going to take a while for them to kind of catch up, because if you look at their MO over the past couple of years and the different devices they put out, I don't care if it's the iPhone or the Apple Watch, I think the iPad's the exception, is that they've done a really good job of standing on the shoulders of the giants who've come before them and do a really good bang up job.
Right.
Okay. And I think for the first iteration of the AVP, the Apple Vision Pro, is just to get it out there. get it out there with some companies and perhaps a couple of consumers, but mostly companies who could really use this as a tool, a productivity tool, a business tool, and see where it kind of goes from there. And look, they didn't really, highlight too many things, but they really drove the point home that we have a really good display.
Yeah.
And it's bright, it's sharp, and you can make it huge. Okay. And again, when we go back to the thing that, a lot of AR VR users complain about, it's not having a sufficient field of view. Apple is trying their best to nail it to the wall.
Yeah.
Now, as Apple looks at this, they'll probably look at, everything that's been said and say, okay, I think there's probably some interesting things that's going on over here.
Right.
Both on the AI side and on the hardware side, because let's not forget, there's Orion, there's Quest 3, and then there's the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. So Meta's got that.
So they've got a portfolio at least of different options depending on what you want to do.
Right. And you just got the AVP. So I think if we have this conversation again in probably about, say, 3 or 4 years time, I think the gap is going to be, much more, at least a little more closed up between the two of them. And, will they have, the same exact, functionalities? Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. But, I think, looking what Apple does, I think they're probably going to say that, okay, how can we make, MR or spatial computing, that much better? And also, let's face it, that much more accessible.
Yeah.
For the price of one Quest 3S on the low end, $300. Okay, you can buy 10 of those for one Apple AVP.
Right.
Okay, and if you want to be serious about saying, okay, we're going to go after the consumer, okay, well, I think price is one of those things you're going to have to look at, because the trade-offs that Meta has made in order to get it down to that particular price point,
yeah,
it's reasonable, and you are not shortchanging the experience, too hard.
But let's also talk about the Apple ecosystem too. It feels like Apple has positioned itself to be the better off in this Apple AR ecosystem if they do develop some glasses that are like the Orion, because like we mentioned, with the wrist strap, you just put that technology into an Apple Watch. Mm-hmm. With the Puck, you just put that into this,
into your iPhone,
into the iPhone 20 or whatever version comes out when they're ready to do that. And now you've got, you've already got customers that probably have this. They probably are wearing the watch. And then you don't have to put in, if they have AirPods, you don't have to then do any kind of speaker thing. So that's a lot less hardware that you need in the glasses. You maybe just need glasses that have a bunch of cameras in it and a battery charger or a battery port to charge it. And so that feels better than like, okay, now Meta's making you wear a wrist or wear a wrist strap and this Puck that should be a phone, but it isn't. And then even the phone becomes your mobile kind of GPS and your network. And
yeah, and I think
that's where I would want to go if I was developing one of these things.
And I think, by the way, some of the technology that they put into the AVP, they're borrowing generously from the watch. They're borrowing generously from the phone.
Yeah.
So, that learning curve is suddenly, depressed further down. And that's just the hardware side of things.
Yeah.
And if we go into the entire, what's the rest of the Apple ecosystem look like in terms of services and applications? Well, my goodness, Apple already has, plenty to present there, whether it be, the TV and the music and if you want to work out with it too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it, but be my guest.
I'm wondering what the fitness aspect of that's going to be too at some point. Maybe. I'd rather just have the whole thing work first, and then we can figure out the fitness side of things. What about Samsung and Google? Are those, I didn't even, are they in the space at all? I mean, I know Google had Google Glass so many years ago, and then they kind of abandoned it. But are you hearing that they could be into this space as well?
They're heading in that direction.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been pretty vocal about their partnership over the past, 18 months or so. And at the last Unpacked event, Samsung made the promising that we're going to have something before the end of this year to show you guys.
Okay.
So I think, all things considered, they're going to,
so they're paying attention too.
They're paying attention because, if that next wave of computing is going to be AR or VR or, MR, somewhere on that XR spectrum, two of the biggest companies in the world, as far as technology goes, are by and large noticeably absent right now. Don't you think they're leaving some
Samsung
money?
and Google.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you think they're leaving some money on the table?
Yeah, definitely.
And plus, they both have some technology that they could probably rely on to say, okay, we have Samsung with hardware, we have Google with software and platforms in both of them, and both of them are doing AI. We could probably, put something together.
Yeah.
And that's just the two of them. Okay. There's a lot of other players in that ecosystem that they could, kind of play out and hash it.
Does that mean that there's no room left for any kind of startups, or is there still some space there for a startup to? I mean, you've got Snap, for example, and it doesn't seem like anyone's really excited about those things, are they?
Well, I think that there's a very select audience for that because, they're really all about, kind of content creation and content sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about, things like, here, how do you train people? How do you, do field service? Snap is not the first brand that kind of comes to mind for that.
Right.
But knowing how much, that the creator economy is driving things today, and you have a lot of wannabe and gonna be creators out there, ranging from age 9 to 90.
Right.
Okay. To be able to grab a video and not even use your hands, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Just do it for $1,200 right now.
One last question about the AR VR space is the market at all interested in this? Do you get companies calling you going, what's going on with AR VR, or the other half of your job is more mobile devices and phones, and I think you're a lot happier about that than just having to focus on AR VR, because I know that we don't get a lot of general interest in a lot of these videos. I like talking about it, but sometimes people are just like, yeah, it's stupid, just move on. Like,
well, here's the question that kind of comes up rather often. Okay, is that AR VR is a thing. A lot of companies are watching it, and a lot of companies happen to be, the Fortune 500 well-heeled and well-pocketed companies. Yeah. And that's just the Fortune 500. What about the thousands of other companies out there? And a lot of them kind of come back and say, is now the time that we should make our move? Is now the time that we should invest in AR VR? Are there enough players in the ecosystem who can help us do what we want to do? And if we make our move now, because if the answer is yes to everything else, if we make our move now, are we, pre-disqualifying ourselves from what's going to be coming out in the next 3 or 4 years?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get, caught, holding the bag of all these unused headsets. Okay. And
right.
Because there have been situations of that happening.
You have an example, like some examples, like just early Oculus stuff, or even before that.
I think without naming names.
Okay.
But there's examples of some companies who kind of went whole hog and saying, okay, and this is kind of like in the face of the pandemic when we didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
Saying, okay, we're going to every new employee is going to get a paper headset, a headset, and that onboarding is going to be taking place in there. Training is going to take place in there. Okay. And it worked for a while, and you had your virtual cohort. Your best friend was somebody you could not see their legs or anything, or their avatar looked like just like everybody else. But that is kind of past. That's kind of past.
Yeah.
And have people kind of come back and renew that? Not really, no.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit away from the AR VR stuff and maybe talk about some other future devices that we could say. On the show here, we've had there's another guest I love is Mike Bechtel. He's a futurist, and he works for Deloitte, and he was telling me that we need to get away from this idea of screens. That the ideas for the future of information technology or technology in general, like every device that still is being produced, we're still seeing things on a screen. So these glasses are a great example. Like you put them on and there's a screen. You go to this, it's a screen. You go to your computer, there's a screen.
You go to your tablet.
7 monitors, it's a screen.
Yeah.
Can we get away from the screen? And it feels like you could with these glasses, in the idea of instead of it showing you directions on the street, you could just get them in your ear, and they, why not have glasses that just have a camera on it, and then all of the interaction that you have, the input and the output is either voice input and then voice output, especially with AI being able to do this. Like, could we get to that direction at some point?
It's interesting you bring that up because I think that was the third spoke in Meta's wheel last week.
Okay.
Okay. Because if you take a look at those Meta Ray-Ban glasses, there's not a display in those things.
Okay.
Right. But it is a camera.
Right.
And there is the voice, and, to be able to take pictures and stuff like that. But, more broadly speaking, to go, we're so drunk and addicted to our smartphones. Okay.
That's true.
So, what's the old phrase? Pry for my cold, dead hands.
Yeah.
That's really what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because now we'd have to retrain ourselves to, audibly, receive information and be able to act upon it. Okay. Because we look at several things at once and make a decision. Now, if we're going to listen to things, we have to wait for the entire list to come through.
Right.
Okay. But having said that, I think there's going to be some of those devices that have been out there. We talked about the Rabbit R1 once upon a time. We talked about.
We're going to bring up the Rabbit R1. That's my next question.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of me a little bit. Yeah. All right. Might as well just go ahead and do that. So the other big news was these little solo AI devices. Not because the Rabbit R1 and the Humane AI Pen. Those felt like they were rushed so fast. Mm-hmm. When a lot of the technology around AI should just be in your phone anyway. Mm-hmm. But now there was news last week or a couple of weeks ago of Johnny Ive, the guy who was the big designer of the iPhone, and iPod and probably lots of other products. But now he's working with OpenAI. So now maybe we're thinking of, well, I wonder what they can come up with that would say it's a slow little device that maybe interacts with your phone, or I don't know if they could replace it, but it just feels like you could get a solo AI device that gets rid of the screen, mm-hmm. and it's just into your headphones or your ear pods or whatever you're wearing, mm-hmm. And have that experience.
And that's the thing. We'd have to rethink that experience as to what's going to have to happen. Okay. We talked about the Humane AI Pen. Okay, raise your hand if you're a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, it was the communicator.
It was a communicator, and to be able to kind of train yourself to say, okay, you know what, do I want to sit through listening to this entire text that I just got from Keith?
Yeah,
when I could read it just as fast or faster. Okay, or do I want to receive instructions that way too? Okay, so I think there is kind of space to play, but if your number one approach is to reduce or eliminate the need of a smartphone, you're probably going about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
What you're looking to try to do instead is that, how can we, through an AI device, a dedicated AI device, make somebody's life a lot simpler, period.
Right.
And that's it. And I kind of, equate it to Jarvis. Okay, from the Iron Man and Avengers movies, mm-hmm. And say, to be able to say, here, Jarvis tells me, hey, it's your wife's birthday, it's your anniversary. Should I send flowers, sir? I'm like, get on that, make it happen, But it solves a problem.
Right.
It's out of my way.
Right.
I can devote just enough brain power to this, and then be done with it.
It feels like that a lot of the AI is just waiting for humans to tell it to do something, where we almost want the AI to be a little bit more proactive and almost remind me to do these things. But mm-hmm. again, I've got to set up my own reminders, for example. It's like, well, no, maybe your technology should know when to remind me of this kind of stuff.
And
maybe that's what but that's all software.
But it is. But what has to happen first? It has to know you and understand you for probably a period of about 2 weeks or 2 months to understand exactly what it is that you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, these things kind of take time.
Yeah.
So that if it's one of those things where I say, look, I have a smart speaker at home, and I could just say, hey, good morning. I have it trained to give me, the sports scores first thing.
Okay.
I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I'm not looking at a stupid, display. I'm making breakfast for my family.
Yeah.
That's what's.
Meanwhile, I get annoyed every time my Amazon Alexa tries to be more helpful. I go set an alarm, and then, so they set the device sets the alarm, and then this Amazon Alexa voice goes, hey, did you know that I could do this? I'm like, I'm not interested. I don't want any other features. I don't want to play a trivia game. Like they're just trying to push, I could do more than just set an alarm for you, sir. I could do more than just, set a timer.
Yeah, but it's trying to prove its value to you.
Right,
because, I think the first, couple of years that I had a smart speaker at home, It was just one timer and one alarm after another.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to having something perhaps a bit more sophisticated, something that.
So is that on me or is that on the company?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I don't think it's mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite phrases in tech is that, you don't need a new fill in the blank.
Right.
You don't need a new smartphone. You don't need a new PC. You don't need a new, whatever gadget you want. You need a gadget that gets you, period. And that's where AI comes in.
Yeah.
And that way we can do away with the screens. We can get through the quick shortcuts and things can get done, a lot faster without, again, us having to devote much time or brain power. Now you have my attention.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about two more devices that I thought were really cool.
Which ones?
So, all right, hold on. One's in my pocket here. Hold on. So I went out after the Apple announcement. I went out and I bought these are the
new ones.
Yeah, these are the Apple AirPod Pro 2. And so these are the ones that are going to get the hearing aid update at some point. I just keep going. When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? Never owned a pair of AirPods before.
Oh, okay.
I thought when they came out, and I have issues with these sometimes. Like they fall out more than they should.
Even with the
I've now gone from
silicone ear tips.
I've not gotten the foam ear tips yet, but that's an additional purpose. So whatever they came with, I went from the standard default. I went down one size, and I think I'm going to have to go down to extra small because I think I have smaller. but I'm afraid that's going to make it worse. So I might have to just invest in the foam one. I do like the charging case though. So again, that's one of the things that will benefit me down the road. Because I've been accused of my hearing is going away from my wife, who says like, "Why is this TV so loud?" And other people saying, constantly having to talk louder. The other one that I do not have yet, but is interesting to me, is this sleep apnea detection feature on the watch, because now your watch is adding more and more health features that it didn't have. The first time I tried the Apple Watch, didn't have a lot of this stuff, and I just didn't like wearing the watch. So, but that might be like, okay, well, if it's going to start monitoring, heart rate, now I can work out with it, and and if it's doing other things while I'm wearing it, that I can then present to my doctor, that in theory should keep me healthier or preventative rather than reactive. So, like, are you excited about those features as well? Is that where wearable devices are going, and more of either the fitness or the monitoring of the health?
I think that's where wearables have to carve out their own niche that nobody else can do. You can't do it on a smartphone. You can't, because that's what we keep on saying about your smartwatch versus your phone. Okay. Why do I want to make a phone call on my wrist when I can just do it over here? Why do I want to read a text over here when I can do it on this? But this can't track my sleep. This can't track, my heart rate.
Unless you buy an additional device that does that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And those can cost, anywhere between $50 and $500.
Yeah.
Take your pick. But I think, let's start with the sleep apnea piece. Okay. This is not new. This is another example of, Apple, standing on the, they stand on the shoulders of others, who've been there before.
Yeah.
But now, considering that, Apple has the biggest installed base of smartwatches compared to any other vendor in the world. Okay, now we're keying to another, keying to that huge market segment.
Yeah.
With this feature. I mean, I've had a Fitbit for years, and I still use I'm still using a Google Watch, now. And during the pandemic, my wife said, "I want you to, take a sleep apnea test," and I did it right from my wrist. And I gave that to my doctor, who said, "Okay, let's take this to the next level,
right?
And to see if I, what level apnea I had and what solution they would end up recommending to me." And I said, "Okay, that really makes sense now." So now I sleep with a CPAP machine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's saving my marriage.
Okay.
It's,
all right.
you don't see it right now, but I used to have a whole row of bruises on this side of my rib cage from my wife trying to push me and punch me at night. But I think, having that, that health piece, at least now with Apple, it's like, okay, they're keeping league with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And doing something about it.
Yeah.
But
I think I want to have a discussion with a doctor at some point about how useful these devices might be at some point. Like, because again, if I went in and went into my physical and, had a stack of papers that says, here's all my data for the last year. Now tell me if I'm okay. Or, no,
Or just mail it in.
What they're going to do is they're going to be like, no, here's what you got to do. You got to, open up and say, and, they're going to monitor everything right then and there. It's like, well, but don't you want, as a doctor, you would want a lot of this data. And I don't know if the doctors are ready for that yet.
I think anything that could help corroborate what they're thinking and seeing.
Yeah.
Because, here's the dirty little secret, right? Is that, you can go to the doctor and they can ask you how you feel and you say, I feel good. I feel fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Now your definition of fine may have changed going from 30 to 40 and 50, et cetera, et cetera. But now you got data to back it up.
Right.
And it says, now that you're this age, you should be keeping an eye on this.
Right.
And, one of them is, kind of like you pointed out earlier, it's going to be your hearing health. Okay. And, a lot of people who just aren't aware that they have problems hearing. They really don't. I mean, the stat right now, according to the World Health Organization, is about 1.5 billion people worldwide have some sort of hearing loss.
Yeah.
Majority of which don't know that they do. They're just settling for whatever they have now.
Right.
So to bring, that, full hearing back, can you imagine what that might be like? Or so, I mean, it's really crazy because, there are people who.
Then I have to respond to my coworker when they ask me a question. It's like, I can just usually just fake it. It's like, I didn't hear you.
Well, it comes the day that you have, your children have children.
Yeah.
And your grandchildren want to talk to you and you can finally be able to hear them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, here's the only thing is that, I rally against this, and this is just me and my own household. I'm like, listen, when we sit down and we talk, we have dinner, whatever, let's put technology away. And one of my kids is going to say, yeah, Dad, I need to have these in so I could hear you. I'm like,
yeah.
I'd like to see something a little more invisible, or even in schools. I mean, at the high school my kids go to, the teachers are very much no AirPods.
Yeah.
Period. I don't know if you're cheating or doing something else, or if you legitimately need that to hear me.
Right.
So
that's gonna be a really big social question. I think when this update comes out, is if I've got them in and someone asks me a question, I better respond quickly and just say, oh yeah, I use these to hear better.
Exactly.
All right. We've gone down a lot of rabbit holes. Ramon, thanks for basically talking me off the ledge of actually, that was my last question was like, do we really need any of this AR VR stuff at some point? Will it get better? Is that gonna make me feel a little bit better down the road?
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. You're gonna want it to the extent that you need it. Probably not. But you're going to want to try it.
It's also need versus want.
Exactly.
Like I might want it, but I don't necessarily need it, right?
Yeah. Give it some time. Give it some time.
All right, Ramon, thanks for coming in again and being on the show.
Always fun.
That's all the time we have for today's episode. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.